It began with a phone call that sounded urgent but kind. A 72-year-old woman from Springfield, Missouri, was told that her bank account had been compromised, and the caller said he could help. His voice was calm, his English precise, and he introduced himself as an agent working with the FBI's Financial Crime Division. He warned that hackers were stealing from her account, that she needed to move her savings to a secure holding account while the investigation unfolded. Within hours, she followed his instructions and wired $95,000 of her life savings to an account she believed was safe. But there was no FBI agent. There was only one Chinese-born scammer operating quietly from behind a laptop who had spent months perfecting the art of fear and trust. By the time the real authorities were contacted, the money was gone, routed through money mules, shell accounts, and crypto wallets before disappearing overseas. When investigators traced the voice, they found a man living legally in the United States, blending into everyday life. Someone who looked ordinary but had mastered a global network of deceit. He had fooled banks, phone carriers, and one innocent woman who only wanted to protect what she'd earned. How does a single voice turn trust into profit and vanish $95,000 without ever leaving the room? This is the story of how one Chinese scammer almost got away with everything. Before the investigation and the headlines, there was just a quiet man who seemed harmless. The Chinese-born scammer, later identified by federal investigators, had lived in the United States for several years. On paper, he was an IT consultant, offering remote computer assistance to clients across the country. He spoke fluent English, had a professional-looking website, and often introduced himself to neighbors as a tech specialist. Nothing about him suggested crime, yet behind the curtain, he was learning how to weaponize empathy. The scammer's entire system was built around trust. He studied the way elderly Americans spoke, the words they used when confused, the pauses that meant they were scared. He practiced phrases like, "Ma'am, I understand," and "You're doing the right thing." He even mimicked the soft professionalism of real bank employees and FBI call scripts. To victims, he sounded calm, intelligent, and above all, helpful. When the Missouri woman first answered his call, she heard what she wanted to believe: authority mixed with reassurance. He told her there had been suspicious activity on her account and that he could help her protect her funds. He guided her through a series of steps on her computer, installing what he called security software that, in truth, gave him remote access. Each instruction felt legitimate. She even received a follow-up email with an official-looking FBI logo, complete with a case reference number. Over the next few days, he built her confidence. He told her stories about other victims he had helped. He urged her not to tell anyone about the ongoing investigation, warning that scammers could be listening. And when she hesitated to move her savings, he said the words that sealed her fate: "You'll get it all back once we're done." In less than 48 hours, she authorized a $95,000 wire transfer to a supposed safe account. On her screen, she saw confirmation that the transaction had gone through. He thanked her for her cooperation and told her the FBI would contact her once the case was closed. Then he hung up and never called again. At first, she waited patiently, checking her balance, expecting the funds to return. But when days passed with no updates, she called her bank. The answer was devastating. The transfer had gone overseas, and there was no way to retrieve it. That was the moment she realized the man she trusted most had been the one stealing from her all along. And for the FBI's Kansas City field office, that call marked the beginning of a new hunt. One voice, one laptop, and a trail that led far beyond Missouri. The beauty of the scam was in its simplicity. Every step was engineered to look legitimate. The Chinese scammer knew that fear could open doors faster than malware ever could. His script began the same way each time: an urgent warning, a calm reassurance, and a false sense of partnership. He didn't steal passwords, he convinced his victims to hand them over willingly. The Missouri woman's case was almost textbook. After gaining her trust, the scammer instructed her to log into her online banking portal, pretending to verify her balance. Using a remote access tool disguised as FBI security software, he watched everything she typed. When she hesitated, he told her she was helping protect the country's financial system. That emotional trigger, patriotism, made her cooperate fully. Once connected, he initiated the $95,000 wire transfer, routing it through a chain of money mule accounts that had been created months earlier. These mule accounts were the heart of the operation. They belonged to real people, students, freelancers, and immigrants recruited online through fake job postings that promised quick commissions. Each mule received a small cut, sometimes only 2%, to receive and forward money to the next account. By the time the funds reached the scammer's final destination, the trail had crossed 5 US states and 2 foreign banks. But that wasn't the only method. The scammer had perfected multiple layers of deception. Some victims were told to buy gift cards, others were sent links to fake cryptocurrency exchanges where they converted their savings for protection. In reality, every digital transaction flowed into one crypto wallet controlled from a single laptop. He used VPN masking, voice modulation software, and even spoofed caller IDs showing FBI, Washington Field Office. Behind that illusion of professionalism was a man meticulously tracking his victims. Investigators later found spreadsheets listing names, ages, and financial profiles, including notes like trusting, widowed, or asks too many questions. These details allowed him to adapt his approach for maximum psychological impact. The scam wasn't random, it was personal. For months, the stolen money circulated through an intricate web of shell companies registered under generic names like Tech Care Solutions and Digital Frontier LLC. Many of these were traceable to California and New York, where foreign nationals helped launder funds into Hong Kong and Singapore accounts. Once abroad, the money was converted into USDT, split into smaller wallets, and erased through crypto mixers. To the FBI Cyber Division, this level of sophistication suggested training, someone who had studied financial systems, maybe even worked in IT security. It wasn't a random scammer, but a cog in a global machine of elder fraud, one that moved billions each year with near-total anonymity. And yet, no system is perfect. A single wire transfer flagged by a Missouri bank's anti-fraud department contained a tiny irregularity, an account number reused from another suspicious transaction in California. That tiny overlap connected what seemed like isolated cases across multiple states. When that data reached the FBI's Kansas City field office, everything changed. Agents began tracing the digital fingerprints, building a map of connections that stretched from Springfield to Shenzhen. The illusion of safety was cracking, and the man behind it was about to face the one force he couldn't manipulate: time. The deeper investigators dug, the clearer it became that the $95,000 Missouri case was not an isolated tragedy. The Chinese scammer was part of a multi-state fraud ring, a hidden structure linking bank accounts, crypto wallets, and call center operatives across continents. Each member played a role. One made the call, another opened mule accounts, and others in Hong Kong, Shenzhen, or Kuala Lumpur handled the digital transfers. Together, they operated like a corporation, efficient, emotionless, and devastatingly effective. For months, the scammer moved unnoticed through the American heartland. He relocated between Missouri, Illinois, and California using rented apartments, prepaid phones, and Wi-Fi from public libraries. He lived modestly but quietly accumulated wealth. The stolen funds were converted into cryptocurrency and sent to foreign exchanges before being withdrawn as cash by accomplices abroad. Through this seamless flow of money, he managed to make it appear that the $95,000 had simply vanished into cyberspace. Investigators later discovered that the scammer maintained communication with overseas contacts through encrypted apps like Telegram and WeChat, using aliases such as Tech Agent 01. Messages revealed coordinated discussions about targets, scripts, and refund timings. They treated human victims as case numbers. Some chats even referenced prior scams in Texas, Florida, and New York, showing that the same tactics were being replicated nationwide. As the network expanded, the scammer began to feel untouchable. He drove a Mercedes-Benz, paid in cash. He dined at high-end restaurants using prepaid cards loaded with stolen funds. To his acquaintances, he appeared successful, a young immigrant making it in America. But to the FBI, he was becoming one of the key pieces in a national puzzle that linked elder fraud cases across the country. The Department of Justice, DOJ, had already opened multiple investigations into similar scams targeting seniors. What made this case stand out was the precision, the way every detail was scripted to mimic law enforcement communications. Agents at the U.S. Postal Inspection Service noticed striking similarities between the fake letters victims received and real federal documents. Even the formatting, signatures, and reference numbers matched official templates. Then came the turning point. An FBI analyst in Kansas City connected the Missouri wire transfer to another transaction flagged in Los Angeles 6 months earlier. Both accounts led back to the same Hong Kong intermediary bank and a recurring wallet ID on the Ethereum blockchain. That digital fingerprint became the thread that tied together an entire operation. By late 2023, the FBI Cyber Task Force had mapped the ring's financial movement across at least 6 states and 3 foreign jurisdictions. Surveillance began. Agents traced IP addresses, monitored logins, and quietly observed as the scammer continued his daily routine, making calls, sending instructions, managing crypto wallets, unaware that every keystroke was now under federal watch. But arrogance has a way of making even the smartest criminals careless. In December, the scammer used a personal email address to confirm a bank transaction, the same email tied to his apartment lease in Springfield, Missouri. Within days, a federal warrant was signed. The man who believed he could hide behind screens had just exposed himself with one simple mistake. The arrest came quietly, almost poetic in its timing. It was early morning in Springfield, Missouri, when agents from the FBI Kansas City field office and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service surrounded a 2-story apartment complex on the east side of town. They had spent weeks tracking the suspect's movements, confirming that the Chinese national rarely left home before noon. His routine was painfully predictable: coffee, headset, laptop, and a dozen calls that would soon be recorded as evidence. At 6:15 a.m., the command was given. Agents breached the door, weapons drawn but calm. Inside, the scammer sat at his desk, the same place he had stolen $95,000 from an elderly woman just months earlier. On the screen was an open chat labeled "Client Refund Update." He didn't resist. He didn't even speak. He simply raised his hands as if he had known this moment was inevitable. The raid uncovered everything investigators needed: 3 laptops, 4 smartphones, stacks of prepaid debit cards, and printed documents showing wire transfer records linked to victims across Missouri, Florida, and California. One spreadsheet titled "Active Clients" listed over 120 names, each with age and financial notes beside them. Among them, agents found the initials of the woman whose life savings he had erased. Digital forensics painted the full picture. The scammer had maintained at least 9 mule accounts under fake business names, cycling stolen funds through them before sending transfers overseas. The FBI Cyber Division also traced several crypto wallets holding nearly $280,000 in digital assets, most of it unclaimed by victims who never reported their losses. It was, in the words of one agent, a perfectly ordinary face behind a perfectly engineered crime. In federal court, prosecutors described the operation as a psychological heist, one that preyed not just on financial weakness but emotional vulnerability. The scammer sat motionless as the DOJ attorney read aloud victim statements. One came from the 72-year-old Missouri woman who said, "He told me he was protecting me. I believed him more than I believed my own bank." The defense tried to argue that the man was a minor player, a technical assistant following orders from overseas, but evidence proved otherwise. He personally directed victims, transferred funds, and managed communication logs. His fingerprints were on every transaction. The judge, citing intentional exploitation of the elderly, sentenced him to 24 months in federal prison, full restitution of $95,000, and deportation after release. To some, the sentence seemed light, a mere 2 years for the destruction of someone's life savings. Yet, to investigators, it represented a symbolic victory, a link in a global chain finally exposed. When reporters asked about the case, FBI Special Agent in Charge Charles Diube stated, "This isn't about one man. It's about an entire industry of deceit that hides behind a friendly voice. We're not done yet." But even as justice was served, the digital money trail told another story. More than $400,000 connected to related scams remained unaccounted for. The shell companies still existed. The crypto wallets were still active. And as the scammer was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, one agent watching from the gallery quietly said, "We caught one voice, but the others are still calling." Even after the sentencing, investigators knew the case wasn't over. The Chinese national they arrested was just one visible piece in a far deeper structure, a system that had turned elder fraud into a global business model. Forensic analysts in the FBI Cyber Division and the Department of Justice, DOJ, uncovered encrypted messages linking his activity to several overseas operations, including networks in Guangzhou, Kuala Lumpur, and Phnom Penh. Each shared the same playbook: recruit tech-savvy agents, target Americans over 60, build emotional connections, and drain accounts under the guise of protection. The network was disturbingly organized. Agents discovered that many scams were coordinated from call centers disguised as tech support companies, employing dozens of workers who read from identical scripts. Some of these scripts were written in both English and Mandarin, suggesting direct training from groups inside China. Money flowed through digital corridors, from the United States to Hong Kong, through Singapore, and finally into cryptocurrency wallets managed by laundering specialists. One of the most chilling findings came from a laptop seized during the Missouri raid. It contained a shared document titled U.S. Operations 2023 Targets. The file listed over 10,000 American phone numbers, mostly belonging to elderly citizens. Each number was labeled with personal details, gender, estimated savings, and notes like lonely, nervous, or trusts authority. To federal investigators, it was clear these weren't random victims, they were chosen. Despite multiple arrests, the larger machine remained operational. According to a 2024 FBI report, elder scams accounted for more than $3.4 billion in reported losses that year alone, and experts believe the real figure is far higher. Agents estimate that less than 10% of victims ever come forward out of embarrassment or fear. This silence is what allows the networks to thrive. Analysts also traced part of the unrecovered money from the Missouri case, about $400,000 linked to similar operations, into digital yuan, ECNY, exchanges in southern China. These government-backed digital wallets provided anonymity disguised as regulation, effectively burying the stolen funds under legitimate cross-border commerce. It's like trying to track smoke through fog, one cyber analyst said. By the time the Chinese scammer began serving his sentence, his digital footprint had already multiplied. The scripts he used, the accounts he opened, even the voice recordings of his calls were circulating in online black markets, ready to be used by the next wave of criminals. To them, prison wasn't a deterrent, it was just part of the job. As one FBI investigator summarized it, he wasn't the mastermind, he was a salesman in a billion-dollar industry built on fear. And if one polite voice can steal $95,000 in a single call, how many others are out there, dialing, convincing, and vanishing, before anyone even realizes what's been lost? In the end, justice caught up, but only with one man. The Chinese scammer from Missouri will spend 24 months in federal prison, repay $95,000, and face deportation once his sentence is complete. Yet, for every case like his, hundreds more unfold in silence. Across America, thousands of elderly victims still answer calls from voices that sound calm, professional, and trustworthy, voices promising safety but bringing ruin. This story was never just about money, it was about trust, a fragile line between help and harm that criminals have learned to manipulate with frightening precision. The woman from Springfield believed she was saving her life savings from thieves. In truth, she was wiring it directly to one. Her story isn't rare anymore. It's becoming the blueprint for a new era of digital deception. The FBI continues to issue warnings, but awareness alone isn't enough. Technology evolves faster than protection, and scammers evolve faster than laws. Somewhere right now, another phone is ringing, another victim being told, "I'm calling from the bank." Maybe the most haunting question isn't how this happened, but how easily it still can. You've been watching Crisis Classified. Until the next case, stay aware.